Good evening, everybody, and welcome to my podcast, Peace in Central African Republic, Drawing a Roadmap. Let me begin my podcast with the issues of peace. What we mean by peace isn't what we can define from our context, from the context of Western understanding, from the context of European understanding, and from the concept of Arabian or Asian understanding. Peace in Africa and peace in other part of the world has different dimensions, and it has different understanding. But generally speaking, peace is absence of war, conflict, and absence of kind of dictatorship. And also absence of any kind of human tragedy. If we take reference and if we define peace in this way, then there is significant absence of peace in many parts of the world. I am not daring to say that Africa is the only region, only continent where peace is absent. I must say that there are many other parts of the world where we see absence of peace. So the stereotype which we belong, especially who are from Western countries and Western societies and European societies, we have a stereotype that African countries are not peaceful because this is created by them. I would agree with this, and I think peace is a collective effort which can be brought to a society if there is substantive presence of national and international consensus, and that consensus must be driven by democratic values which are agreed between interstates and intrastates elements. Let's jump into the situation in Central African Republic. To begin with this issue, let me give an introduction on Central African Republic. Central African Republic is a landlocked country in Central Africa. It is bordered by Chad, Sudan, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, Republic of the Congo, and Cameroon. The capital city of Central African Republic is Bangui, and official languages are French and Sango, which is a national language. There are ethnic groups like Bagara Arabs, Baka, Banda, Bayaka, Fula, Gula, Gbaya, Kara, Kresh, Mbaka, Mandija, Angbandi, Runga, Sara, Vidiri, Udabe, Yakuma, Yulu, Kanori, Jende, and other minority groups, ethnic groups. And this is a Christianity dominated country where 73.2% are Christian, 13.9% are Muslim, 12% are traditional faiths, and 0.9% there is no information about them. The republic has been established on December 1, 1958, and they got independence from France. So it is a francophone country, and their government system is unitary presidential republic, and present president is Fortish Archen Touadéra, and prime minister is Felix Malowa. The country is experiencing a huge humanitarian crisis with an absence of institutional democracy. Since gaining independence in 1960, CAR, Central African Republic, has experienced decades-long violence and instability, including they have experienced 6 military coups. And the recent military coup took place in 2013, and they have ousted the government of Francois Bozize, and now the country is experiencing extreme poverty. I'll talk about the crisis in short. Before that, let me talk about the present government. The present government is led by Michel Djotodia, and they are also fighting with different other forces like there is PK5 rebel group, and also other rebel groups, especially there are Muslim rebel groups, Christian rebel groups who are also fighting against the government, and also there are fightings in between them too. In July 2018, MINUSCA and government security forces launched an operation to disarm a militia group in Bangui's PK5 neighborhood, a predominantly Muslim enclave in the majority Christian city. And there are rumors that peacekeepers are intending to disarm Muslims. So there are clashes between Muslim majority groups and also between the Christian groups. In the midst of all these crises, in June 2024, the UN announced the deployment of additional MINUSCA troops. MINUSCA is the UN peacekeeping operation in CAR, Central African Republic. But still now there are reports that 176 peacekeepers have been killed, including humanitarian workers. Recently, the ousted president, François Bozize, has returned to the country, but the government has disqualified him from running in the national election, and as he is now being under an international arrest warrant. In early 2023, CPC rebels, this is a Christian outfit, rebels launched a new wave of attacks with improved weaponry against the government, raising fears of a return to intense fighting. And also there are some progress in implementing the 2019 peace deal, and the UN has announced that there are two major armed groups has been disbanded. In July 2023, there was a referendum, and the referendum has given President Touadéra to run for the presidential election, and the presidential election has held in 2024. There is a report published by Human Rights Watch. Let us look at these report. And the report has covered many areas of national scenario of Central African Republic. They have covered civic, political and media space, security conditions, and justice for serious crimes, displacement and humanitarian needs, the report says political space is increasingly restricted after a 2023 constitutional referendum removed term limits for the president, Faustin Archin Touadéra. So the president can now stand for election again, and political opponents were targeted in 2024 in the aftermath of the referendum campaign, which saw crackdowns on civil society. the media and opposition political parties. Local elections originally slated for October 2024, but the country's first in over 36 years were delayed until at least April 2025. So the election has been postponed, and the reason behind the postponement of election is lack of funding. And also the presidential election will also be held in 2025. The security conditions of the country is also not stable, and also destabilizing day by day. The report says there are 97 incidents between January and August 2024 where humanitarian actors were targeted. Especially the UN peacekeeping mission MINUSCA, they deployed more than 13,000 military peacekeepers, and also more than 2,400 police across the country. And the militias like Azande Ani Kipigebe, which is a gender-based ethnic militia based in the southeast, and the Union for Peace in the Central African Republic, UPC, and CPC, they have targeted civilians abruptly. And also there is another armed group named 3R, Return, Reclamation and Rehabilitation. They have launched attacks on civilians also but in the northwest region bordering with Cameroon. The absence of justice is also a serious concern if we consider peace issues, peace building in Central African Republic. In September, I'm quoting from Human Rights Watch report, the Special Criminal Court, which is a war crimes court that is a part of the domestic justice system, but has both national and international staff and benefits from extensive UN and other international assistance. So they arrested and charged Abakar Jakaria Hamid, who is known as SG, as Seleka leader, for crimes against humanity and also war crimes he has committed. And also there are other leaders like the ex-president Bochis, Eugene Barrett Nagukoset, Biane Samnidrio, Fermin Jr. Dombe, and so they all are facing crimes against humanity in the SCC. Now let us discuss about the displacement and humanitarian situation. Basically, for these coup and anti-coup and infights between the armed groups and among the armed groups and between the armed groups and government forces, the civilian population continued to pay a heavy price for violence throughout all decades. According to the UN, 1.2 million Central Africans has been displaced and there are internal displacement and also international migration. Also, there are refugees from Sudan. More than 29,000 Sudanese refugees took refuge in Central African Republic. The most catastrophic news is their population is 6.2 million, where 6.1 million, where 2.8 million people needs humanitarian assistance, and there is a significant budget gap, which is $175 million as of September 2024. So the situation is really horrible. Now, OCHA has published a report on 5th of December 2024 on Central African Republic. So the report says out of 6.1 million people, 1.9 million people are most vulnerable, and humanitarian actors provided life-saving assistance to 2 million people in 2023. There are worrying humanitarian situation in Haut Bomo prefecture, and even the villagers in the Central African Republic, they are facing insecurity, and also there are Chadian or nationals from Chad who are taking refuge inside Central African Republic. And also I have already mentioned that there are more than 29,000 Sudanese who took refuge in Central African Republic. The humanitarian catastrophe has many folds. So the picture is there is an impact of Sudan crisis in the Central African Republic as people are fleeing Sudan to take refuge in Central African Republic, and also from Chad people are taking refuge in the Central African Republic. That's why the humanitarian situation is getting worse in the Central African Republic. There is a report from Al Jazeera, and the report says Central African Republic is going through catastrophic humanitarian crisis, and the country needs urgent humanitarian assistance from international community. There are 14 armed groups who are fighting each other, and it disintegrates existing social setup, political setup, economic setup, and there are moral degradation in the country. Now let's look at the peace issue, how peace can be built in the Central African Republic or CAR. The first point is ensuring national election, local election means democratization of peaceful transfer of power. But the recent referendum, which has extended opportunity for the sitting president to get re-elected, that brought new infighting among the armed groups and the other political factions. Second point is the international community needs to bring all the neighboring parties on the table to discuss, to stop international migration into Central African Republic, especially the Chadian government and the Sudanese government should be engaged in dialogue. So there should be international effort, especially led by African Union, to bring peace in Chad and Sudan. The next point is there should have long-term peace deal between the conflicting armed groups, which should include disarmament, disbanding the armed groups, integration of the rivaling parties in national mainstream politics, and rehabilitation of the fighters. These recommendations should be implemented by the national government, and also international initiatives should be taken with the leadership of the UN and African Union and other local organizations. So to bring peace, the first thing is dialogue, then bringing all forces together to sit in one table and to allow them to have dialogue and to reach in a long-standing peace deal.